On this episode of On the Move, we have episode 11, Jon Binninger.
Yeah, we caught up with him at his mountain home in Troy, Idaho. John and his wife Hannah, they own Landgrove Coffee Company. We were happy to catch up with them. They make some great coffee, and this was Joe's first time meeting John, and I've known them briefly over the past year or so, maybe a little more. And great folks. They make great product, and we know them also through the horse world. So we had a great time talking about where horses and coffee and perfection meet and truth, finding the experts in the different fields that we all work in and strive for perfection and doing better at.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I I mentioned in the episode, I don't drink coffee, but he is super knowledgeable when it comes to that. You can tell just in the way he's talking, and he's drawing from all this experience that he has. And I'm haven't been around him, but I'm sure that's probably how he pursues horsemanship too. You can tell he's a very dialed and thoughtful person, which is pretty cool to hear when you have someone like that talking about their craft and kind of letting them riff. Even, for example, it's coffee, and it's not something that I necessarily think about in my day to day. It's just really cool to hear someone talk about something they're really passionate about. And it was also awesome to hear him talk about the packing he does up in Idaho. I'm sure he's had a ton of awesome adventures. He kind of scratched the surface with us in this episode, but man, he's definitely like living a lot of people's dreams up there. It sounds like.
Yeah. But again, they make a great product. And if you're a coffee drinker, you ought to go get some
Yeah,
Landgrove coffee. We drink lots of it here. I was drinking Landgrove coffee during the podcast. So sit back. Actually, if you need to go grab a cup of coffee, go do that. And then come back and then hit play and enjoy episode 11 of On the Move. Ladies and gentlemen, a quick message. Before we get into this podcast, you'll notice at times our guest's audio is a little bit scrappy. Our guest, John, was having some trouble connecting to the internet at times, and he bleeped in and out on us. And in the end, all of our uploads did not quite make it in the high-quality version. Please bear with that. In the future, highest quality audio and the highest quality conversation is our number one goal. It's what we strive for all the time. And we still felt in the end a lot of good things were said, and this was well worth putting together into a podcast, uploading it, and giving it to you all to listen to. I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, and we're live. All righty. Well, hey, John, it's good to see you. Thanks for it's great that we were able to sit down and do this with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
I guess you're sitting there in front of your house and we're having a little trouble with our connection, but hopefully we can keep things rolling as we go through this podcast. Yeah, this is exciting. We're happy to have you. I think you came on my radar initially when I came down here to live at Bill's Ranch, and he had your coffee, and he was always talking about your coffee and your all's company. And I'm kind of a mediocre coffee connoisseur, so right off the bat, I was into it. Stuff was great. And so I've kind of known who you guys were for a while, and it wasn't until Texas back in March when I got to meet you and your family in person. And I think at the time, Joe and we might have been kicking some ideas back and forth about doing a podcast all the way back then. And so as soon as I had that idea in my head, everywhere I went and everyone I met, I was kind of I was looking for podcast victims. And when I met you and your family, and I thought, oh man, what a great guy to have on the podcast and talk about all the cool stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. We'll do our best here. It's not something I've ever done. Or Flora said, "Did you get ready for it?" And I said, "Get ready for it? What do you mean? We're just having a conversation." So I didn't get ready for it, but I'll look forward to having a chat with you guys.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, you guys are kind of cutting out a little bit there too.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I did want to get out of the way, something that made me very interested in you was you don't have a cell phone. And I was curious how do you do business? How does that work? Does somebody carry one around for you?
Well, that actually changed a few months ago. I have another business, and I was, it's quite an inconvenience for all my friends and family who have threatened to buy.
It's all right. We might have to.
Are we cutting out?
Reevaluate how to get him on.
All right, I'll send Flora a message here. All right,
No
we
problem.
got you back.
Thanks for your patience there.
We got you back, and we're recording.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that.
It's not enough.
Hey, no worries. When you're trying to, I don't know what they call this. It's not phone in, but whatever it is. When you're trying to riverside into a podcast from a remote, beautiful location, there's going to be issues, and that's just how it is.
That's how it is. Yeah, we don't have the best internet out here, that's for sure. So I'm running off Hannah's cell phone here.
Hey, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty
that
quality.
leads right back into what I was asking about.
good.
So you're using the internet on Hannah's cell phone, because that was something that intrigued me about you. Is I think I was standing by the side of the arena, and your wife was talking to Keith Logston, and they were talking about you and how they didn't know where you were that previous week because you didn't have a cell phone, and that just kind of pricked me, because I was one of those kids. Like, now I've got a phone and I do all this stuff, and everybody can probably get a hold of me. But for a long time, like, I didn't really want to have a phone. So when I hear somebody say they don't have a cell phone, I get interested in why they don't, and just, what they're all about.
Yeah. I was saying Keith there, he thought I was being rude because I just showed up at his place and they didn't happen to be home, and I missed him, and he was upset I missed him. And then he remembered I didn't have he was like, "Why didn't you get a hold of me when you're coming in?" Well, I told you the day before I'd be there about 10. So when you don't have a phone, you kind of set those times and those dates and you be there. And but people aren't used to doing that now. It's just they get a hold of each other on the go. And so, and I enjoyed not having one, but it's really what I found is it just becomes this selfish thing where it's inconvenient. It's so inconvenient for everybody else that I ended up getting one about 3 months ago. But I'm not sure I'm going to keep it 100%. I haven't been, it really is. I can feel myself kind of getting to where I'm starting to get where I use it and starting to rely on it. I think I might go back to where I was with it, but they're so dang useful now. And they do everything that you always have a reason to be using the thing, and you're never not using the thing. That's what bugs me about them. I don't like being addicted to that. And they're your camera, they're your everything. And so anytime someone's on them, it's usually for very good reason, but you're always on them. So it's like, I don't know. I kind of miss the days before them where people were, now you're with somebody and at any second they're just gone. They are sitting there, but they're like this and they're gone. And I'm starting to do it a little bit. I've had this phone for 2-3 months. I don't know that I'm going to stick with that, but, so it takes you out of the moment when you're with people. That's the biggest thing I don't like about it. Driving around with my kids, going somewhere or whatever, you're sitting there talking on the phone or, doing all that. It's like, you're there, but you're not really there. But I get why everybody has them and everybody uses them, and I'm sure it's not a holier than thou type thing at all. It's just, it's more of a selfish thing and relying on other people who have phones, because I'm always grabbing one from somebody and borrowing their phone to call home because I'm, doing something or need to communicate. So it's more of a selfish deal, but I do enjoy not using them all the time.
Yeah. Well, it makes for kind of a cool entrance, though. Yeah, because it creeps into your life more and more. And next thing you know, you kind of reason that it's useful, so you need it. But like I've started like on dates now for sure. I make sure I leave it in the truck. Like if we go to eat or something, I leave it in the truck.
Do you?
And yeah, because otherwise I will end up. Yeah, and I'm not real bad about it. I know people that they've got to put an app on their phone that locks all the social media away from them, except for maybe like an hour a day, because they have no self-control. So like they decide not to look at it, but they still need an app. And then they get one of their kids to be the one that knows the password to the app. So that way there's no way that if they start getting the heebie-jeebies, they'll go on there and they'll change the settings.
But the self-control thing, it's not like it's,
no, I think you've done a good job saving yourself from that. Yeah.
Well, but those things are designed to hit every little endorphin shooting thing in your brain, and not having the self-control is like not having the self-control not to use heroin. I mean, those things, just because you don't have the self-control, it's because those are billions of dollars spent, making them addictive, essentially. So, I mean, they're very naturally addictive, and it's very easy to do it. Just, it'd just be nice if you could, but everything's on them. You can't even get on an airplane hardly without having it and everything. So it's, it's the way it is, but they're so portable and so convenient and so there all the time that it's different. It makes life a little bit different, and you got to be able to set the thing down and not operate with it, I think a little bit each day, and, not lose those.
And we lost him again. Here's where our audio starts to get a little crummy, but it cleans up near the end.
Can they hear you?
Oh, yeah, we got you.
Okay. Gosh darn it. Sorry about that. I don't know. It was going good, and then
I can hear you.
Faded out.
Can't help that. Well, we got you up to a cell phone. Joe and I were just talking. The next thing we might need you to get is one of those Starlinks, the new Elon Musk internet deal.
No kidding. I know it. That'd probably take care of it.
That probably would. Let's see, where were we? Well, yeah, we were just talking about the phones, but I guess you might feel like they finally beat you down, but I don't fault you for that. I think if you had the character to not have one all those years, you're probably going to be fine when it comes to the dopamine addiction from social media or something.
So, John, did you ever feel like, maybe you could just get like a flip phone or something so you could call or text people? Or
went through the 30-day trial period and gave them back.
Yeah, those things can be kind of. I saw a new one the other day though. They had a flip phone that's trying to look like an old-fashioned flip phone, but when you open it up, the inside's like a flat screen, like a smartphone. Which that's like a weird deal, right? Because you might as well just have a smartphone.
Well, that's kind of what mine is. It's a cat phone, Caterpillar.
Oh, is it?
And it closes, but it opens it up.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, they're pretty nice. It's pretty rugged, it can take a beating. So, but you can also, get directions and stuff.
Okay. No, the one I saw was a Lenovo, I think, and it was shiny and slick and pink or something. And so, no, that sounds like a rugged phone then.
Yeah, I dropped it in my coffee the other day.
I think the first cell phone my dad had was one of those Motorola's, the yellow and the black. They look like a bumblebee.
Yeah.
And the little antenna pulled out of the top. And I thought that was high tech.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a question. So running this business, not having a phone, you don't feel like has stifled you in any way? Because, I mean, the business has been going for, 20 plus years now?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far. Joe. It probably has a little bit, for sure. But But Hannah has one, so if we were on the road or something, we could be in touch. No, it definitely made it more complicated. Yeah, and it was inconvenient for my customers at times, for sure. But I was able to navigate that. We're a small business, and have pretty good relationships with we're mostly a wholesale business. But yeah, it definitely was a challenge at times. Everybody wants to text you a picture of their coffee brewer and working and all those things. Usually I have an employee or Hannah or, have them email it and just kind of worked around it. So
Gotcha.
it was an issue, but I guess I should say my customers were very understanding.
And in a way, they probably valued that reliability that you offered.
Yeah. I like to help people with equipment, plumbing, and electrical, whatever, more than just the coffee. Whereas, some coffee roasters maybe don't have those other skills. That was always kind of a little niche we could do is, unplug drains, rewire switches, just things where it's kind of hard for a restaurant owner or manager to, wait and call a plumber, an electrician, or these people, and they're real expensive, and they can come for a week. Whereas I can come in and tune up their grinders and their espresso machines, and then also I knew I was deficient in some ways, so I try to make up for it in others, I guess.
Sure, that makes sense. So that kind of leads in well to my next question. How'd you get into that line of work? Because I don't know if Ben's told you, but I'm sorry, but I actually don't drink coffee at all. So I don't know anything about the industry or anything like that. But
Yeah, sure.
how did you get into how did you come to know about that type of stuff and that machinery and want to start being a producer?
Yeah, because I didn't drink coffee until I was probably 26, 7 years old either. I wasn't really into coffee. I mean, obviously, I wasn't drinking it, but my brother, we're from northern Idaho, is where we grew up in Priest River, Idaho, and my brother graduated college and worked for his girlfriend's dad at a distribution company up in Spokane, Washington. It was kind of right in the early 90s when these drive-through espresso shops were just starting to pop up. They kind of started over in Seattle and that country, and then they moved, outward from the Northwest. But Spokane was pretty early in that game, and so he was delivering cups and all the paper products and things, the syrups and things that these espresso shops were using. And he was kind of always into coffee too. He even had an espresso machine, I think, in college a little bit, so he was tuned into that world. And so, we had some connections in California too. We'd go down there in the summers, do some construction work and stuff. And so I can't, maybe split up with his girlfriend. I can't remember how that worked, but he worked up and delivering to these shops for a couple of years, and then went down to California and said, I'm going to open up one of these drive-through coffee shops because they were doing so well in Spokane, and he was seeing how much business they were doing, and there weren't any in California. I mean, there literally were none. Maybe there was one somewhere, but we didn't know about it. So he went down there, I think it was 93, and started looking around Sacramento. We used to work down kind of the Bay Area country. He was looking around Sacramento, a little more spread out, a little more drive-through kind of type place, and found a parking lot he thought was suitable out in front of this liquor store and a dog grooming thing. It was kind of a low down older shopping center thing. He got an agreement with the owner of the property to construct this drive-through coffee shop, and I'd been going to college for a couple of years and kind of spinning my wheels, and he needed some help building this building, so I went down there in the fall, and we built this coffee shop, just probably 12-foot by 20-foot little drive-through building. And we built it in the fall, and we opened it, and I stayed with him and helped him open it, get it started into January, February, into the spring. And it just took off and did super well. And we learned a lot, and we kind of learned on the fly. But he was always into quality, and I was too. So we did a really good job. It was a pretty quick learning curve, but we figured out what people were after and how to make the drinks. Of course, we make them better nowadays, but it took right off, and I'd already determined I couldn't live in California after being down there in the summers. So I came back up to Idaho and got with a buddy of mine, Moscow, and we opened one down in Boise. I think about a year and a half later. So that's how I got into it, was helping my brother Steve there, and then opening my own. And in the meantime, my other brother Mike got with Steve down in California, and they opened up 2 or 3 others over the next year or two. And our shop in Boise, there's a bunch of road construction. It was kind of a growing spot out there, and it just never really took off like the one in California, and it wasn't really enough to support my partner and me, and he ended up wanting to keep going to school, and so ended up selling that, and I left Boise too, which was a little too much of a city for me anyway.
It certainly is now, right?
Yeah, it's gotten big. But by then, my brothers had 3 or 4 shops, and I'd met Hannah at that point, and we were together. So we said, "Hey, you ever roast any coffee? What do we know about that?" Who's in Boise, and that was a big learning curve too. I mean, back then, there was nothing. It was 98 by then, but there was no internet. I mean, like information. Now you get on there, gosh, there's just zillion. Probably way too much information now. You probably wouldn't know how to wade through it. But there wasn't any. So it was just buying the few books that were out there. And the guy I bought, Dave Ledgard, the guy I bought coffee from in Boise, I called him up and say, "Hey, Dave, I'm a coffee roaster now too. Can you give me some tips?" And so got 5 sentences worth of tips and told me a couple of good places to buy some coffee. And so we just started buying coffee and roasting it and kind of figuring it out. But that's how we got started. My brother ended up opening 6 or 8 stores, and then we kind of just, we got local stuff all the time. And we bounced around Idaho a little bit, down to Paul Salmon, and then back up here. In about 20 years ago, we came back up here. And then so we've just kind of been real slow, word of mouth growing. We've never tried to sell any, it's just people come to us, "Hey, I like your coffee, got it somewhere else." And so we've never been in danger of getting rich, but we've had it's paid for all our horse stuff, and we've had a good run with it. And so we've always lived in cool spots, and, can take time, more time than if we were working for someone else. And of course, running your own business, you're working probably a lot more than if you just had a job. But overall, it's been a great deal for us.
You guys have a great product. Your coffee tastes unique. It's unlike any coffee I've tasted. And like I said, I am a mediocre connoisseur, because I don't really get, I'll drink whatever coffee. I definitely know what bad coffee tastes like. And I'll be very disappointed if I pay $4 for a cup of coffee and it's bad. But if I pay $1 for a cup of coffee and it's bad, I'm like, oh, well. And if I need the caffeine, I'll drink it,
Right.
And but your all's coffee is very unique, and it's very good. I remember Bill Barnes was saying it tasted like tea to him, and in a good way. He meant it as in it wasn't burnt. It tasted just unique. And when you guys got started back then, was there the coffee tribalism that there is now? It just seems like with, you've got Black Rifle Coffee, and then you've got the wars against Starbucks, and there's all these, like everybody's a coffee connoisseur out there.
Yeah, back then there was pretty much just Starbucks when we got going. Maybe Pete's was coming on, that sort of thing, but it was pretty much Starbucks. It was a real dark coffee. They started in the 70s, and it was dark roast. That's kind of where people took it, especially the espresso. Then it was always considered to be a strong dark kind of roast, but that's completely changed now as far as what espresso is. Just anything anybody wants to call it. It's just coffee that you run through an espresso machine, and roasters just call coffee that they think tastes good through an espresso machine espresso, but you can run any coffee through it. It tastes similar to what it would taste like with any other brewing method, except it's a lot stronger. It's much more concentrated. But
yeah, that's been the majority of my disappointment. Is like going to a coffee place and you get an Americano or something.
Yeah, no, I think Starbucks was the only. Oh, go ahead.
I think the delay sometimes it helps us talk over each other. But my disappointment sometimes, you go to a coffee shop and you order an espresso or an Americano or something, and it's supposed to be like a better cup of coffee, and it tastes worse than something you could make at home in a French press.
Yeah, it's such a subjective thing. I guess the best way I can say it is when people ask, because we're always trying to help people find something they like. And I think the best way to go about that is the biggest thing that we do to it is how dark we roast it when we pull it out of the roaster. And 20 more seconds at the end of the roast is completely different than the 20 seconds before. So just how dark it is, and you can see that easily. But that's the biggest thing we do to the bean. We have a much smaller, aside from that, we have a much smaller impact on what it's going to taste like than what's already in that bean by the time we get it. How it was grown, what varietal it was, how it was processed after when it was harvested, if it was harvested properly. And then there's a big processing method that goes into, there's 2 coffee beans inside a cherry, and it's got the fruit all around it. So getting it from the cherry to the green beans that we have there's a lot of work and infrastructure and a lot of human toil involved in that, and how that process is done greatly affects the flavor. So we get samples of the green coffee, and then so we'll get lots of little tiny samples, put them in a sample roast, and then pick the ones that we want to keep. But really the biggest impact we have after we get that green coffee is how dark we roast it. You can mess with air flows and times and temperature graphs, and there's millions of dollars worth of computer equipment you can apply to that. But it's really how dark you roast it, and you don't want to roast it too fast or it's not developed evenly, and you don't want to bake it. So as long as you're in that kind of mid-range roasty kind of time frame, then the biggest impact is how dark it goes. So I can't remember where that question started, but so I usually have people suggest to find a degree of roast you like. Do you like light? And light's the big thing now. If you're a cool roaster nowadays, you roast everything really light. Well, that's great, but it's a really sour kind of coffee, and it's only going to satisfy a small percentage of the people. So can you still hear me, Ben?
Yes, we still got you.
Oh, okay, good. I lost you there.
Yep, I got you.
So, I like to have people find a degree of roast they like. Do they like a medium where it's just maybe starting to get a little oily on the surface, or they like the real dark stuff where it's greasy on the surface, or the real light cinnamon brown kind of thing, or somewhere in the middle? And my preference is always kind of right in the middle, kind of like a lot of the way I go about life. But it's just kind of a really nice balance of these brighter, light roasted flavors and the roasty, kind of caramelized, darker flavors. And to me, it's kind of the best balance. We do a lot of that medium roast. We also have some really nice special micro lots that we roast really lightly for the folks who like that. And then we have some that we over roast and burn for the people who like really dark. And I kind of joke about that just because it's not my thing, and it's really smoky when you roast that stuff. But a lot of people really like that dark coffee, and it's so, we don't tell people what to like. We just roast a lot of different ways and have several different coffees. So then once you find, kind of where you land in that roast spectrum, then you can mess around with different coffees, different regions, but you really can't say that like this region produces this kind of coffee. You just can't. I mean, there's some real general characteristics that you can apply to that, but it's more find somebody who's roasting coffee that you like, because if you just say, oh, I love Peruvian coffee, well, that doesn't really work. You love the Peruvian coffee that you got somewhere, that was roasted it was the right coffee and it was roasted to the right place for you. So you kind of have to dig into it a little bit more than just saying, oh, I love coffee from Sumatra or Ethiopia or something like that. But it's a great world and it's super fun finding the stuff you like. My personal favorite coffee usually is Ethiopian coffees and a pretty light roast on it. That's what I like. People love Sumatran coffee. It's got a special processing method that adds some kind of heavier type flavors that are fairly distinctive. But it's a cool world. But the bottom line is get something with some quality. Use good water. Brew it for about 3 or 4 minutes. And keep it fresh. And, it's hard not to get good coffee if, somebody who's roasting to start out with some good coffee. And there's so much good coffee. Most of these roasters now, if you get it fresh, it's good coffee. There's just a lot of good coffee out there now. And the coffee producing world knows that the type of product that we want in this country and in Europe, and they're producing really good quality coffee. So it's pretty easy to find good quality coffee. It's hard to find good quality coffee that's fresh unless you know kind of when it's roasted or how you're getting it. And the freshness is key, and it's really a short-lived thing. So, a few weeks out of the roaster and it's starting to really get stale. If you could put it in the freezer, it keeps it perfectly. I'm on my soapbox here, but you got me started. So, but if you could get it in the freezer, then it locks it right at that freshness. And there's a bunch of stuff on the internet.
No, you're good. I've always wondered about the freezer because I think my mom did that for years, and she said keep it in the freezer. Yeah.
Maybe not to put coffee in the freezer, but we put all sorts of things.
Yeah, I've been doing that. I've been keeping my coffee in the freezer.
Yeah, and we get. I don't know where you got it.
Good. No, I'm glad to know that because I've been doing that faithfully, and I always felt stupid when people said not to do it, but I've been doing it anyway.
Well, if you like it fresh, that's the place to keep it. I mean, you don't put tomatoes in the freezer, but you put meat and you put peas and you put some things do very well in the freezer, and coffee luckily happens to be one of them. So and the freshness is key. Yeah. And when you look at this coffee, a little tip when you're buying it, if you're buying it in the grocery store, you can see it. If it's a lighter type roast and it's oily looking, it's starting to get old. Those oils kind of come out to the surface as it gets stale. If it's a real dark roast, they're kind of oily right from the start. But if it's a medium or a light roast and real greasy looking, it's been there for at least a few.
Hey, as far as caffeine in coffee, is a darker roast less caffeinated than a lighter roast? Is that true?
Oh, that's kind of true, but it's so little that it's not negligible, really. Biggest thing on that is how strong you're making it, how concentrated it is. And that's affected by how long you steep it and how much coffee to water you're.
And we lost him again right there. But when we pick him back up, here's where our audio starts to clean up. Good. Hey, we got you back.
Oh, you switched it. I'm there? Okay. Okay, good.
Hey, we had a great run. It lasted way longer that time.
Yeah. All I do is yell, and she comes running.
That was great. No, you're good. We're learning a lot.
That's kind of the point of these deals, yeah.
That's what folks need to hear, these myths, because everybody's out there arguing over about whether to not to put the coffee in the freezer. We just needed someone with authority to come in and tell us how it is.
There's so much mythology, and it's like horses, unfortunately, and there's just try finding a good answer to a horse question when you were not involved in the horse world that you are now involved with. Same thing. There's a lot of people just talking, and you know, it's understandable. It's not necessarily poor intent, but just you know, not a lot of knowledge really. Horses more than coffee.
Uh, well, no, that's great though. Those are little things though, huh? Everybody's an expert, but not everybody is a coffee roaster and actually knows knows these things. They're just going off of whether or not they think it's cool to put the coffee in the freezer or not.
So, again, me not really knowing you, when you were talking about being in, kind of your formative years doing the coffee stuff, were you into horses then? Have you always been into horses, or did that come later once you kind of established yourself in the coffee deal?
Well, I wasn't able to afford any horses until I got into the coffee deal. But yeah, my
Sure.
dad, well, we had horses growing up, and we'd ride them a little bit, not too much, but we had a few around always. But my dad always kept horses. I didn't live with him. He lived a little bit south, kind of where I live now, but he always had horses for hunting. And so we do a lot of pack trips in the summer and then hunting in the fall. And so that was what I really, that was my, I mean, I always loved horses and I loved the whole, deal with them. But the hunting was what I really loved to do, and packing into the backcountry and that sort of thing. That's what I always loved it since I was just a little tiny kid. And so as soon as Hannah and I
That's
could rub
awesome.
two nickels together, I bought a little bought a little gelding, and well, I bought a nasty little mare first. I'd like to help her now because I sure couldn't then, but and a little 2-bit mule, and we were in the mountains just as soon as we could. Little crummy 3-horse wide trailer with a T100 Tacoma, and we did some hunting, and so that's kind of where we got started.
Heck
But yeah, I
yeah.
always loved them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. My dad here in Virginia, so he grew up doing a lot of pack trips and stuff. But I've actually never been on a pack trip. Done a lot of just kind of, primitive camping, like out, like setting up a base camp kind of in some valley or whatever, but never actually, loaded up some panniers and went out anywhere. But he grew up here in Virginia until I think it went into the 90s, but there was always a state 4-H pack trip. And so
Oh
like
wow.
all the 4-H kids would get together and do like a couple day pack trip, somewhere into the national forest. Um, but yeah, that's something I definitely like as I get more time and there's plenty of places to do it around here. We've got lots of national forests. I just got to take the time to do it and kind of learn some of those skills. But
Yeah.
that's awesome that was kind of your start to the whole deal, because there's definitely, again, I've never done it, but there's like a sense of just like adventure and independence that goes with
Hmm.
doing a pack trip that you don't get a lot of other places.
Yeah. 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 I love it. Um, and nowadays there's a lot of the gear they sell makes it pretty easy for folks to be successful. If they got some pretty well broke saddle horses, you can make it fairly easy with the panniers and stuff too, because there's a zillion things that can go wrong out there, and they do. But um, you get things weighed out even, and you use those panniers where you kind of hook them on or strap them on, and um, they they ride pretty good. They're not ideal, for a lot of heavy kind of work, um, but boy, for like some weekend trips and stuff, they work fabulous. And that's the way my dad packed. And that's the way we packed growing up, and it works super well. You don't have to, study for 6 months to go out and have a nice weekend and get the same enjoyment that people who maybe worked out a long time do. So there's a lot of neat
Sure.
equipment out there now, and
That's awesome. Yeah, it's about like a lot of things. It's becoming more accessible to
yeah.
kind of the lay person.
A couple weeks ago, we were going to try to do this, and then I think you were busy doing a trip or something,
That's
and I didn't know what, because I was communicating with Flora, but then I saw a video of you guys horseback. Were you doing some packing thing then?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, my buddy's an outfitter on the Middle Fork Salmon. He's a rafting outfitter. The Middle Fork of Salmon's a big wilderness float in Idaho. One of the better known in the country. It's 100-mile wilderness float. Anyway, he's an outfitter there, and he's kind of the head of they have a little association, the outfitters up there. But anyway, he called the other morning, like I think it was a Sunday morning there, must have been a little over 2 weeks ago. And there had been some burns up in that country last summer. And then some thunderstorms came through like the Saturday, the day before he called. And it's pretty dry country. And when things burn off, there's no vegetation, and you get a bad thunderstorm, and it can kind of create some really bad flooding. A creek will blow out, and so this one little side tributary blew out and just completely plugged up the Middle Fork Salmon for miles of just logs and boulders. And so 2 commercial outfits had just started out, and they got to this blowout, and of course they couldn't proceed. It's low water this time of year, so the commercial outfits will fly their guests about 25 miles down and start, but they float a lot of their equipment and food, and the guides all float in to save money so they don't have to fly. So there weren't any guests, but there were two outfits and about 20,000 pounds of gear sitting there on the side of sitting there on the river, and they couldn't get around it. So they were scratching their heads trying to think, and it was only 4 miles from the trailhead from where they launched their rafts, but it was still so much gear, and some of these rafts are 600 pounds, and so they're trying to figure out how to get this gear in there. And you can't fly, you're not supposed to fly anything in there because it's wilderness, so you have to have an exception for helicopters and that. So they're thinking, well, we got to get some mules in here, and gosh, anybody know mules? And anyway, my buddy Dustin, he's done some hunting guiding with us and stuff too, and he said, yeah, I know somebody. So he called me up and said, hey John, we got a little issue up on the Middle Fork, what are you doing? And I said, sound like an adventure. I ain't doing much, nothing I couldn't put off for a while. So I took my favorite packers, which are my 2 children, and we loaded up for bear and took 2 pickups and trailers chock full of critters and went up there. But it was fun. So they also got a chopper in there because we couldn't pack those. Some of these things are 30 feet long, and one of those big sweep boats. A sweep boat's this giant raft with big paddles on either end. They're really cool boats, but they haul a lot of gear with them. And that thing was 600 or 700 or something. So a chopper came in and flew like 6 or 8 loads, and another pack string came out of salmon, and we all kind of teamed up on it and got all their stuff out and got them out of there. It was a fun trip. That chopper, we'd get 200 yards down the trail, and he'd be making another lap. So he just worked one morning, but we worked just 2 days on it and got all their stuff out. But it was pretty cool. It was challenging, weird kind of loads, and so it was fun. It was hot and dusty and dirty, but we paid for half our hay for the year, so that was cool. And they were super happy. They even sent a cook in to cook for us in the evenings, and it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun, and helped them out. Got tuned up for the fall a little bit. Hadn't been doing much really packing wise, and so got some critters in shape a little bit. It was a fun trip.
That's great to hear. Yeah, with all of our
that was an adventure.
they need those mules. That's a perfect example.
I know, it's great.
You got to have them.
And they could have flown it all, but the Forest Service, flying into the wilderness is just kind of they had to basically say it was a safety issue to get the permit to do it, and they want to limit the trips just to the bare minimum. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was neat. And so we had 3 saddle horses and 7 mules, and but we tried to get as much as we could, and it was a pretty nice trail going in there. Thank goodness. A lot of times you're on the steep side of the canyon there, straight down to the river. This was an easy trail, which made it nice. But we put some kind of saddle pannier things on the kids' saddles, and each time we'd come out, they'd ride with a bunch of crap sitting next to them. As a matter of fact, they rode out a few trips because on that river you got to pack your, they pack toilets down the river. On most of these, any wilderness river, you pack a toilet and they use the toilet and they haul it out. So the kids were riding out on several runs back with toilets just stuffed into the panniers on their saddles next to their saddle. It was funny. Luckily, the trip had only started a couple days before, so
The toilets weren't overflowing.
No, they hadn't been used yet. Thank goodness.
That's good.
Flora wasn't real happy about riding with 2 toilets, but she did it.
Yeah, I didn't see any Instagram pictures of that.
I'll bet you didn't.
Yeah, that didn't really get publicized.
No. Plus, riding with those things on your saddle's miserable anyway. You can't even get your feet in the stirrups. But it probably saved us a trip with those kids being able to ride out like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Fun. It was fun.
Do you do any hunting out there, John?
Yeah, we do personally, but then we also work for an outfitter. As a matter of fact, we're leaving here Saturday, Clem and I, and then Hannah and Flora are going to fly in. We help some friends who manage a backcountry. It's called a lodge. It's not really a lodge, just some cabins, but it's a hunting outfit. We're up in the Selway Bitterroot country where the guests will fly in, and then we pack them up to a high camp and elk hunt with them. So we're leaving here Saturday, and we'll be gone for about a month doing that. It's a lot of fun. It's a really cool spot, and it's hard work. And then you get a few days off down by the river and do some fishing and hanging out, and it's a blast. Really make a little money. Plus, we take a bunch of stock in there and eat their grass for a month. So it's fun. We're looking forward to it. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of days, is getting ready to loading up and getting ready to go.
Oh, yeah, that's the best time of the year. I miss being out there because I've been down here in Georgia for, it'll be 3 years at the end of October. And so, man, I start thinking about September and October and being out west and seeing the aspens change color, and it get a little homesick. But man, that's great. Do you bow hunt or do you rifle hunt?
That's a rifle hunt in there. Hannah and I used to bow hunt for a lot of years, but we pretty much once I started having kids, it was like the bow wasn't producing quite enough meat, so we started doing a little more rifle hunting. But I sure enjoy bow hunting. Mostly rifle anymore. Yeah. Mostly taking the kids, and I don't shoot any much really. Every other year or something, I might get a deer and elk or something.
Gotcha. So on those pack trips, you're talking about getting ready already. It sounds like there's just an enormous amount of planning that goes into everything, like an enormous amount of preparation. Do you find that like developing that skill to be helpful in other aspects of your life? Because everybody I know who packs, they kind of have an innate, like, I'm 10 steps ahead of what I'm doing next type deal.
Well, I suppose
they kind of have
so.
That thought
I never really thought about it, but there is a hazardous element to it. It's like roping or something, I'm a terrible roper. I'd love to do it, but I'm no good at it. But anytime you kind of add in the danger element a little bit, working out in that country, it's tough work. It's hard. You got to kind of be, you got to have your stuff. You don't have to have your stuff dialed, but you're just running. Your margin just goes down to nothing. So, the more experience you get in anything in life, of course, the more you don't know, and the better you get at it. But yeah, I think I'm going to be as prepared as I can be so that you can deal with all the things that happen out there. I'm not going to have a problem because I forgot to da da da, or I didn't bring something, or whatever. So when we get there, I'm not saying we ain't gonna have problems. We will occasionally, and we will in the future. But I think it's nice when you're just everything's organized. You know where everything is. You know everything's adjusted. And then you just have a lot better chance when things go south on you to recover and make it through it. But I guess that focusing on that level of detail and that kind of a little bit hyper awareness of what's going on probably helps in other aspects. Probably you can probably tell when maybe you're not as prepared, or you didn't put as much effort into something else that you do when you do this other thing. I think that probably makes sense. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, the other question I had for you, because I'm very interested in your pack stock and the mules out there. What do you look for when you're buying pack animals? What do you look for in your mules, and what are you using, like draft cross mules, or what kind of mules are you using out there?
I kind of have a mix of both right now, but I like draft cross mules, and I've had them in the past, and I've got some right now, and that's my preference. Preference would be a heavier bone type mule. They just you're going through rough stuff, and you're coming down a lot, and it's hard, and it's pounding on them, and I just think they hold up. I feel better for them when they're carrying a big load. I guess the little ones will do it. The fine boned ones will do it, and sometimes they're a lot handier wiggling into spots, but I like the heavier bone ones. But the biggest thing is getting them broken, having something with a nice disposition, something you can catch, and that. And the second thing is the shape of their back. Really, that's the I don't buy them if they're mutton withered and their back's like this. You just can't put a load on that. Whereas if their back's like that, you got a shot at it. Now, when I was talking about those panniers earlier, those things are designed to ride way down on the sides of the mules, down on their ribs. And it's not an
Yeah.
ideal place for a load to ride, but the load doesn't shift. I mean, that's always that's always one of the things you're fighting, is keeping that load balanced, and they have to be within a few pounds in order to ride. But these panniers, they set them down lower, and they can be off a little bit, and it's an easier way to go. It's harder for the mule. It's not as nice on the mule. It's just like carrying a backpack down around your hips or something, instead of kind of up high on your back, where the weight's kind of going down through your bones, and you can balance it really well. So we don't do that type of packing. We do a type of packing that was developed right in this country with Decker. The Decker pack saddle was developed right here on the Locksaw, where we pack a lot, and so we do that. And it's a little bit different deal, where you put a canvas down on the ground and then put your gear in it and wrap it up. We call them manies. So you'd mani two loads, and then picture like hay bale shaped loads, and those would ride up on top of the mule, and they ride right up on the bars of the tree, and they just rock back and forth real nice and even with that mule. It's a tougher, it takes a little more time to get it figured out how to do it well, but once you do, it's a lot nicer way to go, and you can go farther, faster, and it's easier on your critters. So
About how
yeah, I
much
can't remember where that started.
Gotcha. No, that's interesting.
about how much weight are you maxing out on those mules when you're packing heavy?
Well, with this type of loading, when you're loading, with the panniers, you can hang a pannier, and then put stuff on top and kind of piecemeal it on. The way we load it, you're lifting each side and then slinging it onto your your saddle. That's what I was talking about, Joe, with the nice backs to pack. The way we pack, you got to have things balanced and nice. So I like those mules with the nice backs too. It makes that easier. But
Right.
so
You need a more prominent wither.
yeah, well, and it's even just the shape. Even if there's no wither, I guess it's just how steep are the sides of the critter. Are they like this
Okay.
or are
I
they
gotcha.
like this? And some of these Belgian type mules get a little bit rounder, so it seems like maybe the darker mules have a little better backs, but that's not. I got a couple Belgian mules that have real nice backs.
So when you say darker mules, are you talking Percheron
Yeah,
mules as
like
opposed to
Percheron,
Belgian mules?
I'm not, I guess you guys would call them like the mealy mouth, or the black with the white muzzle, and your classic kind of army
yeah.
mule looking Forest Service mule.
Yeah.
I like those, and
We've got a handful of them here. Yeah.
well, I'm looking for them. I'm looking for some that are like in the 15 to 16 hand range, nice heavy boned, young ones, unstarted, whatever. So if anybody has any, give me a call.
Yeah.
Put a feeler out
Yeah.
there. We'll put that out there for you. Yeah, my dad's into the draft mule thing, so he's got a team of Percheron mules, but they're both about 16.2.
Oh yeah,
and
nice.
they're some big stout mollies. They're both probably about 1,500 pounds.
Yeah. Those are beautiful, nice mules. Those are just a little tall for getting loads on. But it's nice sometimes to have one of those, and we've got one back there in the Selway country that our buddies do. And you get a great big old guy, and we've had some big guys out there. You put them on old Lily, and you don't worry about a thing. She's, like you say, she's probably 1,500 pounds, and you can't even get on her without a ladder. But once they get up there, you don't let them get off till you get to camp. But, those loads, Ben, it'd be, so I used to be able to lift a little more like him, but 80, 90 is a nice load, and it's nice on the critters. You start packing hindquarters of elk, when I leave the bone in it, they can get up to 100 and a quarter, per side. So, they'll pack more than that, especially those big mules. They pack 300 pounds, especially if you weren't, going straight up all day. But you start running into galling them on the cinch a little bit, and maybe getting a little sore in the back. So the lighter, that 80, 90 pound range is a pretty good fit for them. And that's kind of an all season kind of weight that you can get by with. So that's kind of what we shoot for on it.
Yeah, we had an old mule in Colorado. You would have liked him. He was probably almost 25 or 26, and he was a dark brown mule, about 16 hands. An old banjo. His sides were real steep, but mostly I think we had 4 or 5 of those Belgian mules, and they were really mutton withered. And I mean, we had a couple that were broke enough you could put guests on them. They had a guest string, and yeah, you were constantly trying to get people to shift their weight and straighten the saddle. And then when we did pack, and I didn't have a lot of experience, we packed some hunters out a little bit, but you would have, if your weight was off at all, yeah, you'd see it right away. Just a little bit. If you stuffed something in one pannier that you didn't have in the other one, and sure enough, that thing would start getting off centered. And even the pads would be slipping out the back. And just everything just seemed like it was weird. Yeah. By the time you went up and down hills and along ravines and all that, you'd go about 30 minutes and you'd look back there and the whole thing was just kind of shimmying apart.
Yeah, and then you saw them in half with the cinch, and that helps a little bit. But they're hard to pack. We've got one in there at Selway that's like that, just rounder than being Corey, my buddy there. He started using panniers on her, and it works pretty dang good because it hangs those darn. And then we just put 80 pounds of feed on either side and just hang them kind of down on her ribs, but at least it stays there. And man, you try loading her proper, and it's hard to keep a dang load on her without cutting her in half. And so, but yeah, anymore I'm looking for them like that. It just makes life so much nicer.
Yeah, you don't see that. There isn't a lot of use for packing mules on the East Coast. I mean, unless Joe, like up near you guys that are hunting, I don't know, are they using mules to pack stuff out or?
There's, I could probably name 2 or 3 people that do it in kind of the more remote places, but obviously it's nothing like um, Idaho or anything like that where there's these commercial guys that you call up a number and they'll meet you there. Like I said, it's usually maybe 2 or 3 guys that's what they like to
Yeah.
do during deer season, and they'll but they've got like 4 or 5 guys that call them every year, and they're not
I see.
exactly advertising or anything like that.
Well, I've bought several from out in that country.
Yeah, but there's definitely places to do it.
Oh no.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, John. But yeah, it's funny. I haven't been exposed a ton to the mule world. I've started some mules and worked some mules for some clients, and like I said, my dad has some draft mules, and he's kind of into the draft thing. Um, but I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I have been to that
Okay.
Reese Brothers mule
I've
sale
heard of it,
down
and
in
I
Tennessee.
I've called those
Yeah,
guys
and
one
that's
time.
like yeah. Well, it's the longest running mule sale in the United States. They've been doing it over like 100 years. They've been having that mule sale now. And it is, I mean, it's kind of an eclectic bunch that gets down there. It's pretty much, anybody east of Texas
Wow.
that has mules, they're going to be at that show or at that sale. And it'll be, like Amish guys from up in Ohio, and then people. I don't know if you've ever
No.
been to New Orleans or anything, but like they don't use any horses in New Orleans because
Oh,
it's
is
so
that
hot.
right?
They only use mules to pull the
Oh,
like
cool.
carts for the tourists. Yeah, so there's always like the guys that like run those cart companies down in New Orleans up there trying to
Right.
find mules to pull the carts and
What
stuff.
time of
And
year is that sale?
yeah, so it is a different deal.
What what time of year is that sale?
What was that, John?
I,
Um, I know the draft sale is like in January, like late January or early February.
I see.
Yeah, it's in the middle of winter usually.
Yeah, I'd like to find a few nice young ones and start them.
Yeah. Yeah. That there's some nice ones there from what I've seen, but Tennessee might be a little bit of a haul for
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
y'all
a hop,
up
skip,
there.
and a jump.
Yeah.
If you buy a few, maybe I can, on one of our little jaunts coming out there to see you, we'll haul it for you.
There you go. Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Ben
we
could
already
do it.
cross the country usually
Ben's a
once or
heck of a
twice a year,
trucker.
so just got
Just
to
put
get a
him
bigger
to work.
trailer and charge people and haul an extra horse.
That's right.
So with all the packing, at least to me, it sounds like you're pretty knowledgeable about all that. And Ben says he kind of met you through the horsemanship deal. How did you get into that uh into that kind of sector of the
Yeah,
horse
well,
world?
we always packed and got along with them good that way, but we didn't do too much else with horses. We might go move some cows with the neighbors and that kind of thing, but I just started getting a little more time and wanted to try to, learn more about horses because, you can be a decent packer and not know too much about horses, really. I mean, you know how to handle them and get by in the mountains and all that, but, not necessarily know how to start them or, get them handy or do other types of things with them. So we just kind of started getting interested in that when the kids were little and started, man, I had a little time, so I started really hunting and watching videos, and you know how that is when you're just kind of looking and you don't have a real uh, source or a real, anybody you can really count on that way. So we got into pony club for a few years. I don't have it now, I guess, but I had an English saddle so I could do some stuff. I was open-minded, just trying to learn about horses. But in Florida was maybe 7, 8, 9, and we were doing this pony club stuff and going to Montana to these fancy, venues uh, and it was just a joke, the horsemanship. And I didn't know anything, but I knew what I was seeing was a joke, and nobody, nobody knew anything or there's just everybody saying something different, and kids getting run over by horses. And I remember one poor little kid trying to unsaddle this horse in a stall, and that horse was plumb mean. And I didn't know much, but I knew not to let him be mean to that kid. I got the kid out of there. It was all I could do, get the saddle off this horse in there. It's like, but then the horse is okay kind of when you're riding it and kind of knows what to do. So they think it's just.
This silence. You guessed it, folks. We finally lost Jon for the fourth and final time. It was just getting good, too. We were talking about him getting into horsemanship, and he was telling us about meeting Buck for the first time. Finally getting some real answers in the horse deal. So, I promise, we'll have him back on. Joe and I would love to continue our conversation where it left off. Ask him the rest of all those questions we had. And in the meantime, go grab some Landgrove coffee. It's the best out there. I think you'll love it. And they got a little something for everybody. Great folks. Really great folks. And hope you have a great day. Whatever you guys are doing. It's late at night for me right now, but you might have just got up. Might be starting your day. Anyway, we'll see you down the road. All right. Bye, everybody.